Welcome to Animorphs Anonymous, the podcast where we casually discuss the Animorphs one book at a time.
I'm Kaycie.
And I'm Alex.
And we're here to talk you through the plot of each book.
But more accurately, take you on tangent trips, factoid forays, and say, well, actually, as much as possible.
Join us on the 1st and the 15th of each month, and we'll take you along on our mission.
And we promise to have you back under the 2-hour time limit.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army.
And we're legitimately recording this time.
Wow, that was a mess.
That was a hot mess of trash that just happened. I'll take responsibility for like 30% of it, and the 70% of that was Audacity being terribly mean to me.
What the hell, Audacity?
Yeah, what the hell, Audacity? What was that all about?
You had the audacity.
How dare you?
I've told that joke like 60 times, but I never get tired of it.
I feel like you've only told it to me in person, though. I don't think you've ever told it on the podcast, and honestly, I never get tired of it, so...
Hooray!
Yay! Alright, well, we have, for the first time ever, a planned start to this podcast. We do. We have to say our dreams, because in the past couple weeks, we've both had Animorphs dreams.
We did!
Mine was really lame. Mine was basically that we were going on a mission with some of the Animorphs. Like, they were there, but we never actually interacted with them. There was Rachel and Marco, and our mission was that we were going to morph sand sharks to go do something underwater, very shallow water, so it didn't have to be, like, deep morph. And we morphed into sand sharks, and I kept dolphining at the surface of the water, and you got so mad at me because you're like, they're gonna know that we're not real sand sharks. You're giving us away. Stop doing that. And I was like, I was just testing the swimming, and you're like, you're gonna get us caught. And then I woke up. And that was my dream.
So you basically had a dream where I was yelling at you.
Well, if you want to get down to brass tacks, sure.
Oh, no.
But
I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You were, like, yelling at me mad about, like, you were just worried we were going to get caught. So you told me to stop, like, jumping as a sand shark repeatedly out of the water. And I feel like that's very fair. Like, I was not upset at any point.
Cool.
But yeah, that was it.
I was yelling out of fear.
You were yelling out of fear. Now go. Yours is so much better.
Okay, so my Animorphs dream was I was walking through the woods with the pack of Animorphs, and we were looking for something, and we came across these ruins of some sort, and we were like, oh, hey, that's probably what we're looking for. Let's go over there. So we did. And we got there, and it was basically like a big pit. It was kind of like a zoo exhibit where you're like standing on a balcony and you're looking down into the habitat. Mm-hmm. And there were like piles of dirt down there, and Jake's like, I'm gonna go down there. So he like jumps down there all willy-nilly and he starts looking around. And as he's looking around, we're watching him, and the piles of dirt start moving, and we start to see what's inside them. And we're like, Jake, you should climb a tree. Don't look around, don't panic, but just start climbing a tree. So he kind of does, and what emerges from the dirt piles are giant scorpions. And so the scorpions spot him, and they start making for him, and he's, like, climbing a tree, and then they start climbing the tree after him. And we're like, oh shit, he's fucked. So I jump in there, and I start morphing into a wolf, and then I realize, okay, if once I get to wolf size, I'm going to be the same size as these scorpions. So then I switch into morphing a lion, and I just start laying waste to these frickin' scorpions. Nice. And I frickin' saved Jake's life, and that was my self-fulfilling Animorphs dream.
That's awesome. See, yours
it was
is
very,
so much better.
It was very, like, sensical. Usually dreams are pretty nonsensical, but this one was very straightforward, which was weird. It was weird that it was so normal.
It was weird that it made sense, and yet at the same time it was taking place like in an Animorphs universe, so
yes,
that's awesome. Yours was so much better than mine.
I saved Prince Jake.
You did save Prince Jake from the giant scorpions. Which is terrifying because I've been watching this Animal Airport show recently on Netflix, and it's literally just about like the animals that they take through Heathrow Airport in England. So they've been featuring a bunch of shipments of scorpions recently. I say featuring. This show came on in like 2012 or 13. Like, it's an old show. But like seeing all the scorpions come through, it's terrifying. Like they're like, they bust out of their boxes all the time. They like chew through plastic and escape, and then like the guys open the box and there's just scorpions, and they're like, yeah, they have super painful bites, don't touch them. So like imagining dog-sized scorpions. God. Yeah, it's like one of those horrifying things. Like when you're a kid, you're like, yeah, quicksand and weird animals, and then it's like dog-sized scorpions, and I'm like, you know what, fuck no, I'm out. That's terrible.
Although they say the smaller the scorpion, the more lethal it is.
Oh,
so really a dog-sized scorpion would, I mean, it would sting you and it would probably impale you, but it wouldn't be poisonous, maybe, by that logic.
Yeah, I mean, and poison is half the battle with them. Like, the hooks would, like, eviscerate you and hurt, but, like, yes. You can shove organs back into an orifice, but, like, you can't suck out poison.
You can shove organs back into an orifice. That's great.
Medical knowledge with Alex.
Hooray.
Poison is what gets you.
It's all those serial killer things that you know about.
Yeah, I'm really into that.
I mean, you can look up lotus boob without flinching. Like, you have a strong stomach, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm all about that. Like, I have to know. Like, when people are like, oh, look at this disgusting thing, I'm like, ooh, let me watch that a little longer. Like...
Oh, God.
I don't know. There's something about it that I just need to, like, know and, like, understand.
Damn.
But, yeah.
Why aren't you, like, a doctor or something? Like a surgeon?
I am not smart.
What?
That's why, because I can't pass school. I'm not good at math.
You don't need math. You just need to have a steady hand and a strong stomach, which you have. Math is for nerds.
Math is for nerds. Not like Animorphs, which is for cool people.
Even though the Animorphs do a lot of math.
They do. Well, yeah, but like they have different levels. Like they support each other's weaknesses. Like Jake is like, if you go a mile when you're going 20 miles an hour, you've gone 20 miles. And Marco's like, let me calculate the speed of light, which is distance. So, I mean, I know enough math to get, like, puns about velociraptors, like velocity, but that's, like, the extent of my math knowledge.
I think it's all about context, actually. Like, if math was presented in an interesting way, then maybe I would be on board with it. But if you just give me a bunch of equations, I'm like, my brain automatically rejects it.
Yeah, you know what? That's absolutely true, because when there's, like, a math problem to solve in the context of like a book or something like that, I get the concepts a lot faster than when somebody's like, here are 30 problems written down on a page, show your work. And then they're like, if you show your work wrong, you get points taken off for it. And I'm like, well, I don't even want to try then, because multiplication was something I figured out because I thought about it for a really long time. And then what really pisses me off is that like I do that thing where like I figure out the 9 times table and then figure out the rest of my math from it. So like, you know, when you're doing like 9 times 5, oh, well, it's 4 because it's times 9, and then, you know, 4 and like 5 equals 6, so it's 47. Like, that makes sense. Like, it's that weird logic. And then I saw somebody actually teaching it like that the other day, and I got really mad. I'm like, I figured that out first. And now you're teaching it in school, you assholes. Like,
wow. So indignant.
I was really mad. And actually, the way I just explained that probably did not make sense at all. But when I saw someone who is good at explaining things do it, I was like, that's how I do multiplication as well.
Well, there you go. That's how you know it's legit. We should get into this book because I have many, many thoughts.
Oh, okay, good. Because I was really excited for you to read this book when I realized which one it was.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and I did not remember quite like the ant book. I didn't realize quite how early the Elemist came into this again, but now that we're in book 7, The Stranger, I like realized where we were and what was happening. Yay. All right, let's get into it.
Cool. This was a good book.
This was a good, oh my god, this book, So good. And it's Rachel, which is my favorite. So, and also I had a lot of nostalgia around this too, because this was another one where when I was reading through, I was like, this is what resonated with me as a child. So anyways, I'll start getting into this now. So the book opens with Rachel and Cassie at the circus with Rachel's dad. It's one of his bi-weekly outings or every weekend outing.
Every other weekend, I think.
Okay, so by every other weekend outing. And Rachel took Cassie with her to the circus because it was really more for Jordan and Sarah. And she's not really interested in that sort of thing. And so she thought bringing Cassie would give her somebody to talk to while they were like going, oh my God, the clowns, this is amazing. But what clowns. They noticed, yeah, clowns, screw that. I did have it. Well, never mind. I was going to tell my evil clown story, how it was outside my house, but that's really all of it.
Oh God.
One ran up outside my house and got arrested a year or two ago.
Yay.
Anyways, while they're at the circus, they notice that there's a trainer who is using a cattle prod on the elephant. And thus begins our opening mission. Yet
another opening where Rachel goes all like PETA on this shit.
Yeah, and then morphs elephant to destroy things. So, you know.
Such
the subtle
rage.
Approach. Yeah, such rage. And she really goes with, like, subtlety when this stuff happens. So, her plan is to sneak into the elephant pen, to morph into an elephant, and then have a discussion, a rational discussion with the trainer. Originally, she was just going to crush him, but Cassie really insisted it has to be a discussion. You know, she's nonviolent and things. So, Rachel sneaks into the pen, turns into an elephant, and then calls him over. And she does. She has this, like, you know, hey, I'm an elephant, and I'm part of the Elephants' Rights Coalition, and if you keep cattle prodding these elephants, then I'm going to come back and crush you to death. And he kind of freaks out. He says the elephants are his property, which pissed me off. Like, come on. And once he kind of starts to see Rachel's side of things, she throws him on top of the circus tent. You know,
it's pretty badass.
She's such a badass. So that happened, and that was the mission, and that pretty much ended it. And we cut to the following day, where Rachel is telling Jake about the mission, and they're pretending Cassie wasn't there. I get it, because, you know, they're like, well, Cassie and Jake are kind of dating, and Cassie's supposed to be responsible, but again, they're just not disclosing everything to Jake. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as they're they're walking through the forest the following day, and they're going to meet up with Axe, and Tobias is with them. Sure, he also wanted to be in the forest. I don't know, but they're going to meet up with Axe, and Rachel starts describing the group, and it's the normal thing, like, you know, the regular descriptors. But I felt when I was reading this like they're starting to change a bit. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
She's just talking about different aspects of their personalities now. So I wasn't sure what to write down about that exactly, but I just kind of noticed it and wanted to see if you did too.
Sorry, I'm looking at my notes, and one of my notes is, I'm with Cassie, I'm all about skunks, they are adorable, because...
Oh yeah, they saw some skunks and they're like, Cassie's the only one that would get excited about it.
Yeah.
Not true.
I'm like, oh man.
They're adorable.
Skunks are so great.
They are so great. I love skunks. If I could have a pet skunk, I totally would.
Going off on a little bit of a tangent, have you seen that video of the guy who's, like, biking on a trail, and then this family of skunks just starts, like, running up to him, and they, like, sniff his shoes, and they sniff his bike and stuff, and then they just run back down the path?
Ooh, I've seen a clip of it.
Yeah, you should watch the whole thing. It's adorable, because you can hear their little skunk noises.
Oh.
So cute. Anyway, that is completely tangent. Back to the story.
Oh, okay, fine. We won't talk about how.
Let's just talk about skunks for 2 hours.
Okay, the skunk cast.
We should do it.
Oh God,
another podcast idea.
I know, we've been throwing them out like every episode. So the skunk cast. Let's talk about skunks. Well, we'll talk about Animorphs first, and then let's circle back to skunks.
Okay, we'll come back.
Okay, we'll be back. Placeholder this. We're coming back to this. So, The other thing I noticed about the descriptors is Axe is now a part of the main group. Like, the last couple books, he's mentioned more of an aside, but this one it was like, here's Cassie, here's Jake, here's Marco, here's Tobias, oh, and here's Axe. And it was really just nice to see him in Rachel's mind as part of the team now. So.
Well, and that's reinforced kind of throughout the books and some of the dialogue, where Axe keeps going like, oh, we've spent 15 of your minutes in this morph, and Marco keeps saying like, hey, Axe, they're your minutes too.
Yeah, they're
like
everybody's minutes.
Yeah, and this comes up like 2 or 3 times, and every time it comes up, I'm just like, oh, they've accepted him as part of the group.
Yeah, and to that point, there's also parts where things are happening where Rachel will say like, oh, and then Axe demorphed, and she'll either not, like, it's he demorphed and then they move on, or it's he demorphed and like we don't even like notice anymore. Like,
yeah.
You know, unless it has to do with, like, the space that they're in, or, like, oh, this is just adding to the general weirdness of this situation. It's not really mentioned anymore when he demorphs that, like, oh, it's so weird that he grew a tail and stalk eyes and he's blue, and it's just like, yeah, Axe is there too.
Yeah, they're getting used to him.
Yeah, they are. And he, his dialogue in this book, too, was, I thought, more cohesive to the book as well. Like, he's starting to learn,
Assimilate.
like jumping way ahead in the book too, when they the whole your minutes thing, when he says like your miles, and then Marco makes a joke about like, oh, they're your miles too, and he goes, what if I use kilometers? Oh shit, Marco.
Oh my gosh. And they're like walking in the middle of like a post-apocalyptic world, and I was just like, Axe, curb your sass right now. This is a serious situation.
Axe never curbs his sass. That's
my God.
That's my favorite thing that he starts to pick up from people. Like, I think he really like looks towards Marco as an example, and of course, like, that's a terrible person to look for when you're trying to be like normal, because he's so like, he's good at it, so it works for him. But if you're not good at joking and you're trying to be like that, like, oh god, it's awkward. Which just makes it better for me. Like, I love it so much.
I love Axe.
Me too. He's wonderful. And then also, while we're on our I Love Axe trail, the whole introduction, after she kind of says, like, oh, he's an alien, blah, 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 is he goes, I was attacked by a cougar. It was exciting. And then he, like, turns to Cassie, and he's like, I didn't kill it. It just probably won't attack me again.
I love that.
It was so funny.
I love how he just immediately knew to turn to Cassie and be like, don't worry, I didn't kill it.
Yeah.
So don't jump up my ass about this.
Exactly. I didn't cut it to ribbons. I just discouraged it from jumping on me again.
Bad kitty.
Yeah, and then right after he says that, Marco makes a joke about him and Rachel, like, you're made for each other. You guys can get married when you bungee jump into an active volcano. So, yeah. Yep. Oh, and then another mention here, too, during this whole intro, was she mentions that she did know Tobias before the night at the construction site, which I think was something that you had talked about in one of the earlier podcasts, so it jumped out at me.
Yeah, because I think we had established in the TV show that there was a flashback where Rachel kind of defended him against a bully.
Yep.
But they never actually bring up anything about how they met in the books.
Yeah, and they still didn't bring it up. They just said, oh, I knew him before that night a little bit. Yeah. So that happened. And then Marco brings up that he and Tobias went on a scouting mission, and they found an entrance to the Yerk pool, and that is why they brought them all together today.
And Jake's really annoyed by this.
Jake's really annoyed, and Rachel's really annoyed too, and then she realizes that Marco did this to give Jake a break and let him rest for a little bit after his whole ordeal in the last book. And then she's less annoyed, but Jake's still pissed. Which is interesting. And then also interesting that Tobias and Marco went on a mission. And maybe this is just because I've been listening to episode 3 again, and like when we talked about their whole relationship of Tobias saying they'll never like each other, and then they go through all this crap together and kind of bring each other out of these shitty situations for that entire book. And so I thought it was an interesting choice that Marco and Tobias were the scouts. And it might be incidental because Tobias is the scout at this point, But
right, and Marco's the strategist.
Right. So it might be incidental, but I still thought it was interesting.
But I like to think that maybe they bonded a little bit when they were working together. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Good boys.
I think so. That's my headcanon. So yeah, all of that goes down, and just a lot of really interesting character interactions in the first couple pages.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting character interactions through this entire book, actually.
I absolutely agree with that statement.
And I love that stuff, so this is why I was like, I really want to talk about this book. So
yeah, good. Yeah, this one's kind of a real mind trip.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to the actual like dialogue in the book now. Marco and Tobias have been on their scouting mission, and they found out that the way the Yeerks are getting into the pool, which they kind of carve out the town a little more too. The Yeerk pool, they say, goes under their school. It goes under most of the shopping mall. It's under a bunch of gas stations. So we're getting more of an idea of the absolute like vastness of this Yeerk pool. Mm-hmm. And they mention that the entrance seems to be through the gap, and then at the end of, like, when they're leaving the Yeerk pool, they come out from the movie theater. So it looks like a movie just got out, but, like, more people come out than went in.
Smart.
So, yeah, it's smart. And Marco mentions, hey, that's really smart, and they're like, assimilating really well, which is concerning and also impressive, given the leadership on this mission. And then Rachel asks Axe at that point to tell them a little more about the way that Yeerks feed. I don't think it's anything we didn't already know from the last books, but he mentions the 3-day feeding cycle, which obviously we've already explored in depth. And then the need for Kandrona rays. And then he mentions that the Kandrona rays are kind of like a sun. I'm not sure if they specifically said that before, but because it was rays and light, I think we kind of gleaned that information. And then Rachel asks, well, how big is it? And Axe goes, well, it could be the size of Cassie's barn. It could be the size of a car. And Marco makes a joke about how surely us American children could wreck a car. Yes, Marco.
Marco and car jokes.
Yes. Marco, you could. You could wreck a car.
Well, and going back to the Kandrona, when they kept saying it was like a sun, I could never understand if it was literally like a sun or if it just acted like a sun does for, life on this planet. So once I found out what, like, the size of the Kandrona, I was kind of taken aback a little bit. I was like, oh, it's like a reasonable thing, a reasonable sized thing.
Yeah, and that's... like, I had trouble wrapping my head around that, too. And I'm also, like, even the descriptor later in the book, like, I don't quite know. Is it, like, a radioactive thing? It sounds more like they've almost just trapped Kandrona energy into it, and they have some sort of processor where they, like, run the energy back and forth to renew itself. And so they're almost having, like, some sort of, like, nuclear reactor. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, and do the rays kind of pulse out of the thing like ultraviolet, or are they like funneled somewhere? Like I don't know. Based
on the ozone smell and like the way that it acts like static electricity, I'm gonna guess it's some sort of like a radiation almost.
Okay.
That was my take on it anyways, and as stated up front in this podcast, I'm not smart. So that's my guess at what this is based on the very little I know in life, is that it's some sort of like radioactive thing. And when they say rays, it's more like a gamma radiation than an actual like sun ray. Okay. That's what I'm guessing about the Kandrona ray.
Seems legit.
It seems okay. So they kind of end the conversation there, and one of the things I took away from this is that they talk about how scared they all are, but Tobias, who is mentioned in the conversation and who they say when they're talking about going back to the Yeerk pool, they're like, last time we went, Tobias was trapped. Tobias doesn't say anything like through this entire introduction.
Yeah. And
if it was another character, I might say, oh, maybe he's talking to Rachel privately, but since it's Rachel, he just literally isn't saying shit.
Yeah.
So that was weird. I thought it was weird. I don't know. Maybe they're just, like, leaving room for Axe to talk. But anyways, that's the end of that interaction.
Yeah, so they make a plan to go scope out the Yerk pool and try to find the Kendrona.
Scary mission.
Yes.
Back to the Yerk pool. I'm not excited about that.
Nope.
Like, when I get, like, to those points in the book, whenever they're like, we're going back to the Yerk pool, I still feel that old sense of, like, ugh, like, this is not a good thing. Why? I'm a little panicky, and I'm reading a book. But, you know, they have to.
Yeah, world saviors and all.
Yeah, it's kind of a job. It comes with the territory. The next part of this book is Rachel is going home, and when she gets there, she's weirdly talking about how hungry the woods make her, and then just drops that. That was like a weird aside. And her mom's there eating Doritos and just zoning out, and she has to like same me. She has to like get her attention a couple times, and then her mom's like, oh hey sweetie, what's going on? And she's like, nothing. When's dinner happening? And her mom's like, oh, your dad's bringing dinner over. And Rachel's like, alarm bells, why is our dad coming over in the middle of the week? And
yeah, he never comes over for dinner.
He never does,
presumably because divorce.
Yeah, because divorce. And like, he just doesn't seem like, she mentions at another point in the book that he's not really the type that does more than he has to visiting wise. Like, he gets caught up in his own shit and then forgets to, like, visit. So, but he's coming over, and Rachel thinks that that's super weird, and her mom goes, no, he just has to tell you guys something that he was supposed to tell you over the weekend at the circus, but apparently forgot.
I really feel this, like, post-divorce awkwardness in all of this.
Yeah.
Like,
it's, and I love that we can sense it, too, because, like, I think, other than Marco's dad, Rachel's probably the one that we see her parents and siblings the most. Other than mentioning Tom's a controller, obviously. But she's probably the one that we see her home life the most. And it's a really accurate way, like, talking about her parents and how they, like, don't get along. And you really get the sense that there is that tension there. And, like, I just like that, how genuine it is.
Well, and in her last book, you know, she kind of put on this air like, yeah, my parents are divorced, but it doesn't really bother me. Like, it's totally fine. And then in this book, we kind of see it's not fine.
And, like, even if it is fine, like, as far as, like, oh, it's not, like, a really negative situation, there's still just that, like, little bit of tension.
Yeah.
So, her dad comes over with Thai food, which made me really hungry.
Yeah.
I want pad thai so bad right now.
Get it. Last time we went to Boston Market, let's just abandon ship and go get Thai food.
Bitch. I forgot about the whole Boston Market debacle. Oh yeah, let's get Thai food.
There we go.
You're right. Abandon the Boston Market plan.
All right, bye guys.
About Thai.
We're out.
See ya. That's how the series ends. Goodbye.
Fluffer McNuttons killed them all. The end.
And, yeah, that's Rachel's dad brought over Fluffer McNuttons. He murdered Rachel and her family, and that ended our view of the Animorphs, and now we're gonna go get Thai food.
Jesus.
That's the plan. All right.
Thai food. All right.
So what actually happened was, Rachel's dad, Dan, comes over, and he starts off talking about how he has this new job offer, and he's not just gonna be, like, the second tier guy, he's going to be top billing now, and he's going to have the, you know, twice run of the news, like at 7 and 9, and it's going to be great for him. And Rachel's like, well, that sounds like good news. Like, why are you pegging this as bad news? He goes, one minor detail. I'm moving 1,000 miles away.
Oh man, I went into like geography mode at this point because I'm still trying to guess where they are, and I'm still.
You would.
I know. Okay, so I'm still guessing they're somewhere in like the Washington, Seattle area.
Yeah.
And then like he goes on to say it's in like a bigger city. They have serious mountains there, and so I'm kind of like, Colorado. I don't know if Denver's bigger than Seattle though. So, and it's not like the mountains in Washington are small. I mean, maybe they're smaller than the Rockies, but I don't know. Anyway, I went into full-blown, like, geography mode. I'm still trying to figure it out.
And did you look up, like, baseball teams and stuff, too?
I know of the Denver Broncos. which is football. I don't know. I don't sports.
I don't know. I think the Broncos are football. You're correct.
But I did go to Google Maps and I checked how far Colorado was away from Washington. It's about 1,300 miles, so that checks out, I guess.
And I, to that point, was looking up stuff because I knew that you would be guessing once you read that. I looked up Carla Belnikoff, and she is not a real person.
Oh, the gymnastic lady?
Yeah. So this is the other thing that her dad came to talk to her about. Rachel storms out of the kitchen after that, and she doesn't, like, scream or slam doors or anything. She's like, I just want my dad to know what it feels like to be left. And she goes to her room, and her dad comes into her room, and the second part of this is that her dad's saying, I've already talked to your mom about this, and I want you to decide, but you're old enough to kind of be on your own now and take care of yourself a little bit. Do you want to move out there with me? And he really promises a lot right now. So Carla Belnikoff is not a real person, but in the book, she's the coach of some Olympic gymnastics. I don't know if I can say she's officially like the gymnastic coach or anything for the U.S., but she's coached gymnasts that have won gold and silver medals for the country. Mm-hmm. And he promises her hiking, as you said, sports, hanging out with him. And he just really is like hammering her with like, it'll be great. We'll have father-daughter time. We'll get to do this. We'll get to do that. And like so on and so forth. And you can fly back whenever you want. You can visit every single weekend if you want. And
yeah, because I make a shit ton of money now.
As the top billed guy. Yeah.
That's another thing I meant to look up, was presumably he's going to be like an anchor man or something, and how much they made in the late 90s.
Like, I don't feel like they made enough to fly out every single weekend.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Oh, so maybe that could be another thing in your investigation. Maybe it was two cities with, like, cheap flights. Like...
Oh.
I don't know.
Maybe.
So, anyways, he was promising a lot. And I think that's when she realizes that, like, he's not promising her this because he really wants... Like, he does want her to go, but it's really because he's afraid of being lonely in the new city. Like, it doesn't have so much to do with her as he just wants a companion for this move.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that actually led me to my first question, which was, like, if you were in a similar situation, what would you do? Like, from both the perspective of, like, what would you do if it was just, like, between your family, like, you know, if somebody asked you to move out with them, and then, like, moving the scope out a little bit, and then saying, like, from the perspective of also you're fighting to save the world with a bunch of your friends, like, what would be your going on in your head in this situation?
I would really, personally, I would have to, like, really disassociate myself from this question because, like, I never met my dad, so I don't necessarily know what it feels like in Rachel's position, but, like, just kind of offhand, if I were Rachel, like, like, throughout the entire book, she keeps, like, bringing this up and being like, she's really tempted by the idea of a normal life. Mm-hmm. But I think, I mean, you also have to think about, like, the whole split family situation. Like, you know, I've got some family myself where it's that kind of situation, and it's not a great situation to be in.
Yeah.
Because not only are you putting strain between, like, you and the parent that you're not with, but, you know, also, like, your siblings and your friends. Like, it's a huge ask to have to make that choice. So I think if I were Rachel, I would basically decide to stay. Just purely from, like, a logical standpoint.
Yeah.
Of my life is here, my friends are here, most of my family is here, like, what are you doing, Dad? Sorry, I got really intense.
No, that was kind of what I don't know. I just was really interested in, like, how you would think of that, because I don't know. Like, in a weird way, I've kind of been in that situation. Like, when we were really young, and I'm originally from Canada and have moved from there to somewhere else. When we were moving, my family, we didn't split up my immediate family, but my family, they posed the question to us, and I was very young at the time. Like I would have been 9 or 10, and they posed the question to me and they said, if you don't want to move, then we won't. And it was the same sort of thing where it was like, here's why we want to move. Here's all the stuff you'll have. Like, here's how great it'll be, blah, blah, blah. So, but if you say no, because, you know, we're leaving friends and family, and we agreed to go, or at least I agreed to go. I don't know what I think my siblings were too young, but I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what happens. And from my perspective, like, I would really consider going with the dad. Like, I would consider that. And that's taken away from, like, my family specifically, like, because I don't associate like Rachel's mom and dad. They're too distant from my parents to like even be a proper comparison. But like in Rachel's situation, I would have really considered it. And the one thing that like absolutely hard stop would have kept me there though was the Animorphs. Like it wouldn't even be a question for me. In this situation, like with my dad telling me all that and Rachel's having this really hard time of like, how can I split and choose between my family who I love? For me, it would have been like, screw my family, the Animorphs, like I have a duty to fulfill here. So I don't know. I was interested to hear what you were gonna say because I feel like we approach these things from different perspectives. Anyways, that was my question for you, and that kind of led us into talking about Rachel and her feelings on it, which is her like, you know, just mulling over this decision. And she does the same sort of thing where she originally doesn't even factor in the Animorphs. She's like, how can my dad make me choose between him and my mom and my sisters? And, you know, he's promising me all these things. And it really is that choice of like, do I have a normal life and a life where we have fun together and do these things? Or almost like, oh, I have this escape. Like if I choose that, everything goes back to normal. Yeah,
it's a way out.
Yeah. So it was interesting. And the thing I liked about this is she really kind of early on, she brings it back up and she reconsiders her decision throughout the book, but early on she makes the decision like, I can't possibly go, I'm part of the Animorphs. And that I feel like every other character would have had a longer struggle time, but Rachel's like, obviously not. So yeah, but this gets her into enough of an emotional tizzy that she's like, I have to think about this, and she can't sleep, and so she decides to morph into a great horned owl and go.
When did she get that
morph? On Tobias. I think they got that in the last book. We didn't see it happen, but that was one of the ones that Cassie got when they were keeping Jake under wraps. So I think they all got forest animal books. That doesn't even make sense. What am I saying? Forest animal morphs.
Cool.
So I think that was one of them, because Cassie got that in the last book simply for keeping an eye on Jake at night. And they mentioned there's eyes like all around in the forest in that book. And I think that's what they meant, is like Jake can't see the owls because, let me tell you, it's frickin' impossible unless you get one that's loud or flying and can keep an eye on it. And sometimes even when they land, they go, they always land towards the middle of the tree and they like settle up right next to that branch, and you can't see them there even if you watch them fly to that spot sometimes.
So cool.
Yeah, they're amazing. So I think they all got the owl morph in the last book.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So she busts in on Tobias, which Tobias was really like pissed with her, trying not to be pissed but really pissed. And there's this crazy video, I will see if I can find it, and you just see this owl flying up out of the dark, and all you see of it is its eyes at first. And it comes up and kind of like sideswipes and takes a hawk and just flies off into the night. And like, it's terrifying because all you see are these floating eyes, and the next thing you know, he's gone. And you see this red tail looking around, and it's infrared, so you can see them clearly, but you can tell the hawk can't see shit around him. Like, he's just looking blankly into the night, has no clue what just happened. And like, that was exactly what I thought about when this, like, They really would probably go after babies more than anything else.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that an owl couldn't sideswipe Tobias and really do some damage.
Yeah, they have such a huge advantage.
at night especially. Like during the day they still have squabbles sometimes, because a red tail during the day will absolutely go into a great horn nest and take one of their babies. But
oh God.
the owls are so overpowered at night that this like is not a fair fight.
God. So yeah, Tobias freaks out, rightfully so.
Rightfully so. He has every right to be mad at Rachel for this. I was upset at Rachel for this. I was like, wow, that's like, how could you do this?
You can't just go careening into every situation.
Exactly. And then it like just gets worse because Rachel's like having her emotional thing and she seeks out Tobias, but then once she starts talking to him, she doesn't really want to tell him what's wrong. So she starts going like, I'm just scared about the Yerk pool. And he's like, oh yeah, we all are, but that's bullshit. What's really going on? And she's like, well, I'm just thinking about going to the gardens. Fly with me. And I pointed this out, Kaycie, because he's like, I'm not flying at night. There's no headwind. It's dark. I can't see. This is...
Yay!
He's like, if you want to go around this meadow right here, that's one thing. But I am not flying to the gardens with you right now.
Oh, I love it.
Yep. So...
Thank you. Slow retcon eventually paid off.
Yes, the slow retcon did eventually get there.
Yay.
Yay. And then they have their conversation. Tobias strongly advises her to go home and do not go to the gardens right now. And Rachel flies into the gardens.
Going back a little bit, Rachel, before she leaves, she kind of indicates as to what is going on, because she brings up to Tobias, like, oh, do you ever think about, like, years from now, like, if we're, like, college and stuff? Mm-hmm. And Tobias is like, oh, I do pretty good at ornithology, the study of birds. And my immediate gut punch reaction was to be like, meds are medicine, Starbucks is the coffee place. But then I remembered that kids reading this book might not know what an ornithologist is.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and like I had the same reaction, and I was like, oh, well, that's,
like Kermit.
That one's fair.
Yeah.
That one's
Okay,
on
I'm
me,
glad.
brah. Yeah, and oh god, that was heartbreaking. I feel like I skipped that because I just didn't want to talk about Tobias. Like, not that I don't want to talk about it, but like I felt so guilty for Tobias, like on Rachel's behalf.
And then Rachel also was like, shit, why did I say that? I'm a jerk. Like, I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, like if she wasn't going through like such an emotional turmoil right now, I don't think she ever would have slipped up like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel so bad for her. And him, like, oh my god. Because Tobias is like, his whole arc, and obviously like we haven't checked in with him in a while, and we still won't for a while longer, but his whole arc is like, this is my body forever. How do I handle this? And, like, to have Rachel, the person that's like, you're human, you're human, you're human. Everything's fine. And even when he's like, I'm not totally human, she's like, no, you're a human. And then for her to be like, what are your college plans? It's like, Rachel, come on. Yeah. Oh, poor Tobias. But he's really, really cool about it. He laughs it off. He totally is like, sorry, like, I get where you're coming from, not to make it awkward. Like, everything's fine. It's cool, Rachel. It's cool.
He laughs to hide the pain.
Oh, and then actually, right in that vein, Rachel says that Tobias is a casualty of war, and I think this is the first time they blatantly refer to him as a casualty.
Yeah.
So that was another like really like Rachel, who's so adamant about him being a human. When we get into her thought process again, she thinks of him as he's a human, but he's gone. Like, his life is over. He's a casualty. So anyways, just thought I'd point that out. So
to the gardens.
The gardens, where she didn't pay for a ticket. Fucking finally. But then she also sneaks into the grizzly pen at night, so you know. And this was...
These kids. Oh, I also griped because she was like kind of flying through the gardens being like, I don't want this kind of animal. I don't want a polar bear. I want a grizzly bear. And I was like, why would you not want a polar bear? They're fucking huge.
Yeah, they're huge, and...
Why would you just dismiss a polar bear out of hand?
They're huge, and they have way better eyesight.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Whatever.
We'll revisit this in a year or two.
Maybe grizzlies can run faster than polar... Oh, really? Oh, Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll revisit this a little later. But I think there's, the reason she wants grizzly is because in her mind, like, it's that native species that's so much, like, more intimidating to her. I think because she knows it. And polar bears, especially, like, in the 90s and, like, with Coca-Cola and everything, I think the view of them was a lot more like they're cuddly and they're nice. And, I mean, yeah, people just don't know. I don't know. That was
I'm
my...
a bear!
Put your head in my mouth! And then when she's acquiring the bear, she has this really... She's, like, kind of applying her situation to everything she's going through right now. And this was interesting from the perspective of leaning into the morph. And even though she hasn't done the bear yet, the thing she's craving is control of her situation. And so when she's getting the bear morph, she's thinking, he is absolutely confident. He's absolutely in control. This is an animal that for thousands of years has been in control and confident. And that's what I want.
I was getting serious flashbacks to book 2 with the cat. Mm-hmm. When she was also leaning into that morph, and I was just like, oh boy.
Yeah, and
like,
that really comes up.
Yeah, like, her more so than the others so far is kind of becoming this, like, using the morph to escape her real-life problems. Like, she did that with the owl, too. Like, she couldn't sleep, so she's like, I'm gonna just, like, escape and, fly around for a bit.
Yeah, and this is, like, I think it was episode 2 that we talked about, like, how this is what makes her the worst morpher. Like, she just leans into the animal instead of trying to find that balance. She's totally... maybe this is the recklessness, because she's totally willing to, like, let the animal take over. She's like, yeah, like, if this is what this animal's instincts are, then let them charge into this situation, and I'll just, like, back up what I can,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting, though. Oh, and she just is struggling so much with this decision.
Yeah, like, and I think it's the next day, where, like, they all meet up again, and she's, like, getting really snarky with the others, because they're all like, oh, like, what did you do last night? Oh, you morphed into an owl, and you flew around, and you went to the gardens, and she's like, yeah, so fucking what? Like, yeah, fucking fight me. And I was just like, holy shit, she's, like, unwinding, and it's alarming.
And it's that Rachel reaction, too, of anytime she's sad, anytime she's challenged, anytime she has something going on, she reacts with anger. Mm-hmm. And so it's like everything is annoying her right now because she's internally struggling. I know this so well because this is me. Like, I'm having an issue at work, so you come home and you say something to me, and I'm like, fuck off. I don't want to talk to you. And it's like, it's not your fault. It's nothing you did. It's just I'm really angry right now. And I can't help but be angry at everybody because something is happening that you may not be involved in. Sure. So, yeah, I totally get that. So when she's doing this, I'm like, I recognize it of like, yeah, like it's because she's struggling, but like the other Animorphs are noticing. And even if they're not being called out as noticing because we're so ingrained in Rachel's head, the minute Marco is more in the fight, all of the Animorphs are talking about it.
Yeah, Rachel and Cassie talk about it.
Yeah. And,
coming up.
Right. And they talked about it, too, at the beginning when Rachel was talking through Marco's character description. She's saying suddenly he's had a change of heart and he's, like, really into this fight now. And I don't know what that was. Interesting.
The kids are keeping things from each other.
They are, and at the same time, they are so much better at reading each other that even though they're keeping things from each other, it's almost more open than it was before. Yeah. Like, they just need to get better at their sharing skills, but...
Maybe they should go to the sharing.
Oh, yeah, I hear that's a really great operation that helps you open up. Yeah, so that's the jam.
Yeah.
Oh, God. This is the flash where it goes from her talking about the grizzly, acquiring the grizzly, to they're at the mall, and Axe is trying to eat cigarette butts.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And they're laughing. They're like, poor Jake having to deal with Axe, and Axe is like, I'm just gonna eat everything. This is why I was laughing last time when you were saying, I don't think kids like coffee, so I don't know why Axe would have liked coffee. This is the exact scene I was thinking of. I was like, he eats cigarette butts and other things like cardboard and things. Like when he gets the boxes with like the cinnamon buns or burgers or whatever he's eating in it, he starts eating the box too, and it's like, no, stop.
Axe, honey, stop it.
Honey, no, put that down. It's dirty.
God.
Oh. And then the other part of this that cracked me up is that they're going into the Yerk pool now, which, first of all, it was like such a minor transition. Like, going into the Yerk pool isn't the big deal it was in book one. Like, that was the whole lead to in book one. And now it's like, oh yeah, they're at the mall. They're about to go in the Yerk pool. But the next part that cracked me up is Cassie and Rachel go to the Gap, and they're talking about Marco's change of heart. Then they talk about Tobias too. They say that they're jealous of him sitting out the mission, but they know it's tearing him up. And then Rachel says, pick something out to try on, and Cassie's like, what? Like, that, I don't know what to pick. And so Rachel hands her a sweater, and she's like, I would never wear something that's dry clean only. And then the very next thing she does is morph a cockroach without batting an eye. Like,
oh my God.
So
I felt that so hard, though. Whenever I see something that's dry clean only, I'm like, nope, see ya.
Oh God, I put it back down.
Fuck that.
No, especially, here's the dumbest one to me. When you're at, like, buying clothes for horseback riding, they have some brands have really nice sweaters that are supposedly, like, part of their riding brand. And then you read the tag and it's, like, dry clean only. I'm like, I'm wearing this to a barn. I'm not gonna get this dry cleaned.
I'm gonna get covered in dust and poop and flies and God knows what else.
Yeah,
Hell no.
Slobber and, like, oh God. I wipe my hands, like, on my own body on a regular basis at the barn to clean them off. Like, yeah.
Freaking, why is there such an expectation for equestrians to look really nice and, like, you're working with horses?
Yeah. Yeah, whatever. It's like the fancy thing. Like, the more money you have, like, they want you to look like the expensive riders, but, like,
rich people don't get dirty? Like, what?
Yeah, because they just hand off their horses to their groom at the end and go swatting off to go drink in the club and watch the polo match. And sorry, my snobbiness is really coming out now. Yeah. If you see anybody at the barn wearing a really fancy sweater, if they're wearing a clean fancy sweater, then you know that they're not cool. They don't handle their horses.
They're from Eagleton.
They're not from Pawnee. What's this horse dancing? Actually, that was one of my favorite things ever. Was we went to Kentucky for the event formerly known as Rolex, but it's now the Land Rover 3-day event. And we were at a Cracker Barrel, and as we were checking out, the guy, like, he was, like, looking at our debit card or something that told him we weren't from the area. It might have just been our accents. I don't really know. But he was saying something like, oh, what are you guys in town for? And we're like, oh, for Rolex. And he goes, oh, you mean the horse dancing? I died. I was like, yes, the horse dancing. And he said it with that southern twang, too, and I don't know if I paid or tipped or anything. I blacked out from there. That was, like, the highlight of my trip, and I just blacked everything else out. It's like, we're not going to get better than this, guys. Call it done. Jeez. Oh, it was so good. Oh, that was a really long tangent.
That was a long way of saying, I'm with you, Cassie. Dry clean only, no way.
Yeah, dry clean only, not acceptable. I 100% agree with Cassie on this one. Yep. That was the one part of Rachel that I never quite got, was the whole, like, spending a lot of money on clothes, looking really nice, and doing your makeup. I'm like, the rage, the battling, the bravado, I love those parts. And then it's like, and I'm also, like, a fashionista, and I'm like, I don't understand.
Nope.
So, yeah. So anyways, they morph in the changing room into cockroaches.
Hooray.
And they do have, they're observing caution. I did not say that right. They're being careful again. And they're coming in with first, Rachel and Cassie, and then Marco comes in, and then it's Axe and Jake, And Axe, of course, has to go through the morph to Andalite, then back. And the only reason they even mention that is to, like, talk about how he filled up the changing room space and then down. And that was it. It's not, again, like we were saying earlier, it's not a weird thing. It's not to call out that he's an alien. Again, it's just, you know, it's normal now. So they hide under the bench, and then soon after, a controller shows up, gets in there, and clicks open the back mirror, and they scurry in after him. And then they say he's going down a ramp, and they call out it's a dirt ramp with just footprints in it. Yeah. So I was like, once again, revisiting my views of what the Yerk pool looks like. No. And this is probably, like, you know, getting way too into detail, but, like, it's once again that whole, like, it's probably under construction, so this isn't fully developed out yet, and blah blah blah. And then after the dirt ramp there's a stairway, but they don't call out what that is. So is that dirt? Is it like metal stairs? Is it, I don't know. So yeah, and they keep checking in with Axe too during this, like, how many minutes have gone past, and Axe, that's, you know, starts the running gag like you were saying earlier of, like, 46 of your minutes have passed. I had
a question for you.
Yeah.
So that's the time that Marco says the your minutes now too, Axe. How do you think Axe took that comment? Do you think it was more like a, aw, they accept me, or don't remind me that I'm stuck on Earth? Like, what do you think it was?
That's hard to say, because...
Well, I mean, you probably know all the answers.
Anyway. Well,
you're omnipotent.
It's a theme that's visited, but, like, I won't have specific citations for you going forward. But I think Axe is never... I'm sorry, I'm trying to think through how to say this without getting too far ahead of myself and going into spoiler territory. But
you don't have to answer either. I just wanted to...
I'll try. I'll give it a shot. It might not be a good answer, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Cool.
So, Axe is not... Andalites in general don't really think of being on another planet like this as trapped, in the sense that, like, Tobias thinks he's trapped as a hawk, or Yerks are, you know, the hosts are trapped. Like, he doesn't feel the same way about that sort of thing. Like, he's on Earth, but it's temporary. His people are going to come pick him up. And him signing up for the Andalite army, or most of his people signing up for the Andalite army, is to be in space and isolated. So they're, like, trained for this. So this is more to him like an extension of him being an Andalite Arsith and learning. Like, it's not so much that he's like, oh, I'm absolutely trapped in it. That's still a concern for him. I think that he, in this moment, probably it didn't send him down the path that it might have, like Tobias, if you say you're trapped. Like,
right.
He probably recognized that it was a joke from Marco. Maybe not a joke, but he recognized that Marco often says things that aren't true, and other people find that funny. And he probably just took it as a learning experience. I don't think this would have spiraled him down into this whole, like, I will never see my family again. I'll never see, you know, my people again. This is blah, blah. And the other thing is, he's still, like, he's sworn loyalty to Jake. Like, that's his prince now. And it would be very dishonorable to go against his prince that he is sworn to. So... he's part of the team. So I don't think this would have affected him in the same way it would affect a human, is I guess what I'm trying to get to.
Okay, I gotcha.
Okay. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Oh man, where are we? We're in the Yerk pool.
Yeah, so they get down there.
They get down there and they smell French fries.
Potatoes.
I just want to say it differently because you said potatoes.
You say potato. I say potato. You say tomato.
I thought you were going to go different.
No, I was going the Christopher Walken route.
Oh no, I forgot about that.
Did you? Oh
no. Now
Champagne?
Lasagna. I put googly eyes.
Wow.
Wow.
Anyway.
Wow. Sorry, Christopher Walken is a treasure. I love him.
He's a national treasure.
He is a national treasure.
Oh god.
If he was a controller, that's what would kick me out of this war. Like, if I was an Animorph and I found out Christopher Walken was a controller, I'd be like, fucking end it, guys. It's over.
All hope is lost.
Wrap it up. All hope is lost. Get out. Anyways, tangents. So they go to the cafeteria in the Yerk pool, which is probably serving McDonald's. I mean, who knows? And they're creeping around, and they're like, oh, we smell something weird. Something weird is passing us, and they realize it's a taxon, and the next thing they know, it slurps them up onto its tongue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, they're freaking out, and then all of a sudden, everything freezes, and they're humans again. And they're like, what is happening? and
everything around them is frozen.
Everything, yeah, and, like, the steam off of, like, mugs of coffee is frozen completely still. It's so cool, like, in the cafeteria. But then they walk out of the cafeteria, and they're, like, looking around the pool, and there's, like, host bodies that are screaming, and their faces are frozen with, like, tears streaming down their face, and Yerk's halfway out of their heads, and...
That's less cool.
That was less cool, but then Tobias is there, and he's human Tobias.
Oh! This next part made me, like, really... Oh, man. Because, like, Rachel is like, holy shit, Tobias, and she runs up to him, and his immediate reaction is to, like, flap his wings and freak out, because he's been a hawk for so long, and he, like, doesn't know how to handle somebody just running at him.
Yeah.
And that, like, broke my heart a little bit.
That broke my heart, and then I also wondered if maybe this was, like, more of their relationship in a nutshell, like... I'm probably reading way too far into this, but I'm going to throw myself out there anyways. So it made me wonder if this was really just like an example of what their relationship is like, where Tobias is happy that Rachel's there. And obviously after he calmed down, he got his hug from Rachel and they were fine. But it's like Rachel is pushing him out of his comfort zone and making him do something and like, or doing something to him that scares the shit out of him. And then he kind of adapts to her. And, like, they lean on each other that way. So it just... I saw this as, like, a glimpse into what goes on between them more than anything else.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, that occurred to me. And then they're trying to, like... Once Tobias is there, they're trying to figure out what's going on. And I think it's Marco that says, this is a Yerk trick. And Axe goes, no, this is way beyond the Yerks. And this is way beyond the Andalites, too. And that's when the booming voice sounds in their head, or not in their head.
The voice of God.
The voice of God. And it's the Elemist, as Axe points out mysteriously, Axe is scared shitless of this guy, and the kids are kind of like, who's this fucking Joker now? And the Elemist goes, I'll appear to you in a form you can understand. And so he picks a Force ghost from Star Wars. Yeah.
Do you remember that episode of Invader Zim? Where, like, Dim's, like, lying in his bed and these aliens appear to him as, like, flying shoes. And he's like, why are you flying shoes? And it's like, this is a form your brain can understand.
I do remember that. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Well, that would have been funny. Oh my... Instead, he's a Force ghost, but that would have been so much better, like, flying, like...
Anyway, that's what it made me think of.
Oh my god. So, he appears as a Force ghost, or what would have been better, flying pair of shoes. And he's talking to them, and Axe is scared shitless, and the kids are really giving him shit. Like, they're done. They don't want to deal with anything else like this. And
this is so out of left field for them. They're just like, fuck you, man.
Yeah, they're like, come on, stop fucking with us. This isn't funny. And then he breaks it to them that he's there to have them decide the fate of the entire human race. So no biggie.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. And he promises them that there's this beautiful planet that they'll bring them to. They'll let them choose some of their family members, friends, whatever, as well as a good genetic basis to breed the human race on. And they'll bring them to this new planet. I mean, they don't specifically say to breed them, but we all know what good genetic sampling specimens, like,
Yeah.
we know where that's leading.
Mm-hmm.
So he said they'll bring them there, or they can keep fighting, but they will go back into this exact situation. So that's fun. And I'll start talking more about the Elemis, because I think I have this ordered correctly. So I'll hold that point, start talking about what the Elemis does to them, which is he starts talking about the beauty of Earth and how much of a piece of art it is, basically. And he brings them to the bottom of the ocean, to this beautiful coral reef and sharks and rays and fish that have every imaginable color. And then he takes them to the African plains over a pride of lions, and in the background there's zebras and gazelles and things. And then he takes them to an amazing city with skyscrapers that are huge and all these bustling people, and then a concert, and then a meeting, which is really boring. I don't know why he took them to an international meeting, but he did. That would have been where I checked out. Like, yeah, I'm out.
You're like, okay. I was on board until that bullshit.
Exactly. As soon as I heard this conference call, I said, nuke the Earth. Done. And then he takes him to a soccer game, and he ends on a painting, which Rachel says she thinks is Iris's. It's probably Van Gogh.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering who you thought that was.
It's Van Gogh does a painting of purple irises, so I think it's a Van Gogh. And being a Whovian myself, and the only episode I've ever paid for, like, not on Netflix or whatever,
that was a good episode, though.
Oh my fucking god, the Van Gogh episode.
That made me cry.
It did. It made me feel a lot of emotions. I didn't cry, but I felt
Well, you never
them.
cry.
I never cry. I just tear up because I
Coco.
laugh. I didn't cry at Coco. I'm heartless. Yeah, but no, it was probably Van Gogh, which was, oh man. If you're not into Doctor Who, the long short of it is that he basically goes to Van Gogh. There's an alien species running around. That's really the subplot of the whole thing. At the end of the episode, after he spends the whole time hanging out with Van Gogh and he's creating art, and they're trying to convince him he's not a worthless painter because nobody will pay him, and because he's getting kicked out of bars left and right, all that sort of shit, they take him to the Musée d'Orsay. I think I'm saying that right. And they show him an entire exhibit of his own work. And they just walk up to the curator of the museum and say, like, as Van Gogh is looking at all of his work on the walls, and there's like a short joking moment about, oh god, they put the hay bales up, that's embarrassing. They ask the curator to say, why have you put up this exhibit? What do you think of Van Gogh? And he does this amazing poetic thing of, if you look into this, a man who is so deep in his own depression, to be able to see such joy and express it in the colors and the movements of these paintings, it's incredible. And there's never been an artist this good, and there never will be another one again. Like, it's this incredible speech. And especially as like an artist, it hits you in the gut.
Oh my god.
So
I'm tearing up just thinking about it.
I know, it's such a good episode. And
so good.
The actors are amazing.
Oh yeah.
It's part of the 11th Doctor and the Amy Rory arc. So, anyways, that's Doctor Who, the other alien show that we talk about? Question mark.
What if the Doctor just shows up in Animorphs?
Oh my god, that would be. I saw. I haven't read it, but I saw a short description for a fan fiction somebody posted about the 10th Doctor and Rose, my favorite combo, showing up to help out the Animorphs and take them on an adventure. And I was like,
Badass.
I've never wanted to read something more in my life. And then I set it aside. So they basically promise that he can save a few of their species, he'll relocate them to this planet, and he will also move some other things of interest to him. He doesn't specify what. Assumingly interesting animal species, that sort of thing. But the choice is theirs. And that starts this whole conversation of, they're just moving us to a nature preserve. They're just going to breed us. And then Tobias says, they're taking us to a zoo.
Mm-hmm. And Cassie's like, this guy's an environmentalist, and he's trying to save an endangered species. We're the whales. We're the spotted owls. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, that's a really good metaphor. Holy shit.
This is such a good moment with Cassie where she's like, the animals that I help out of traps, the animals that I rehabilitate, it is all for their own good, but they are scared of me. They try to attack me. Are we doing this? Are we being too scared? Are we not seeing the bigger picture? You know? Oh, it was such a good argument. So they have that, and they argue back and forth. X says he's not going to weigh in on this because he's not a human. It's not his race, and he doesn't think he'll do it, but he follows Prince Jake's lead. So X is out. So it's just down to the kids now, and Rachel doesn't vote technically, but Marco says, okay, 2 no votes with, Rachel, Tobias, Cassie's a yes. And then Marco votes no, which puts them at, they're not going to do it. They're not going to, go with this. And Rachel has this moment of like, well, I didn't say no, but he's right. And that kind of made me mad because he's right. And then also she thinks about Tobias. She goes, but if Tobias is a no vote and he's willing to stay in this fight, then I can do no less than that. And I saw that again as the push-pull of, like, Tobias is now putting her into that situation and pushing her, and she's going to, like, rise up to meet that challenge. So I really love their dynamic because it really feels like a constant push and pull. Like, they're constantly pushing each other to make themselves better, and they're always supportive of the other person. And I like that together. I actually had a note to talk to you about this, about how much I just liked that that they do that for each other, and that they play on each other's strengths, because Tobias really, he's always considered the wimpy kid. He himself thinks he's weak. He sees Rachel as this pillar of strength, so she's that to him, but he's kind of her emotional center, and he's the one that can kind of talk her down when she's gotten too much in her own head. So and
he's so strong. Like the Elemist was basically like, Tobias, like, if you say yes to this, you can go back to being a human. And he is immediately like, that's, something he's been trying to reconcile with the whole time. And now that he has this opportunity, immediately he goes, no, that's not fair. Like, I'm not gonna let you use me like this. Yeah. Oh, and I was just like, you baby, oh my god.
And it's the exact same thing he does in book 5, where they're like, we can't get Tobias out if we morph small to escape. And Tobias goes, you go. I'm staying here. I'd rather know you guys are out there fighting for Earth. You leave me behind.
Yeah.
Man.
Fucking Tobias.
He's so strong. And that's another thing that makes that relationship dynamic between them work, is that Rachel could bowl over any other guy, and she can have any other guy she wants. Like, she's gorgeous. Everybody loves her. She could get dates left and right. Tobias is the one she goes with, and she can never overpower him, because even though he's quiet and calm and emotional and that silent type, he is so strong. I just love that so much about them.
Yeah, and they both have, like, that fire inside of them. Like, even though Rachel's is kind of, like, out in the open, and Tobias is more, like, inside of him, but they both have that thing. Oh man, it's so good.
Absolutely. And, like, later in the book, like, Tobias, whenever given the chance, he will fight just as much as Rachel will. The only difference is, because he is trapped as he is, he just doesn't get the chances that she does.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We'll just make noises for the next 40 minutes that are just angrily like, emotions. I'm just so, like, I don't know. I don't even know how I'm feeling. Like, it's almost like a mixture of, like, proud of him and really, like, I don't know. I guess proud is a good word, maybe.
He's a good kid.
He's such a good kid. He's so strong.
Good hawk kid.
Anyways.
But anyways, they say no to the Elemist, and the Elemist is like, alright, but if you guys survive this, I'm gonna ask again. And then time resets, and they're back inside the Taxon's face.
Yes. And then while they were frozen, they noticed a drop shaft. So the plan is get the fuck out of the Taxon and get to that drop shaft.
Yeah. So they pull a Jonah and the whale, and they start demorphing inside the Taxon. Basically, Axe gets his tail out and he slices the Taxxon open and they just, like, burst out of it. It's disgusting and amazing.
They're covered in goo and gross.
Yeah.
And 4 bug humans and 1 bug Andalite pops out of this Taxxon, and no one does anything.
They just stare blankly.
They do. They stare blankly, and Jake says, let's get out of here before they can think about it. So that's how that problem is solved.
So, at this point, like, they're human. Like, they're covered in goo, but they're human. Mm-hmm. But can anybody tell? Because as soon as they, like, demorphed and came out of this Taxxon, I'm like, oh shit, they've exposed themselves as not Andalite Bandalites.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't think people saw them as, like, they're half bug morphs just because they were coming out of the Taxxon and they're so huge the Taxxon probably blocked their view. But as they're running, a grown-ass man knocks Rachel over and tries to choke her out.
Right. So yeah.
Like, I don't know if they think that they've been able to, like, double morph except for one of them or what. Like, maybe it's just unclear.
Yeah, it's a little ambiguous as to who knows how many of them know and who lives to be able to tell the tale.
Yeah. And, like, these are, like, the moments where it's, like, I think there's whispers of course, like, these children are, like, they might be children, not Andalites, but we're never going to tell Visor 3 that.
Oh, sure.
So... yeah, because Visitor 3 isn't there in this particular scene, so there would be no way that, like, Visitor 3 missed it or something like that, so...
right.
We'll assume in the chaos they just didn't see them demorphing and they think they're Andalites and human morphs somehow. And maybe they don't know about the technology because the next thing that happens, after the grown man tries choking out Rachel, Axe chops off the man's arm, and Rachel's like, thanks, brah! And then she starts morphing to Grizzly. And, like, if they knew about the morphing technology, which is, some of them do, some of them don't, they would have known that she shouldn't be able to morph into Grizzly immediately from human if she was an Andalite. But
right.
Let's assume in the chaos we all got confused. Who knows? And then the next thing that happens is Rachel goes into Berserker mode. She morphs to Grizzly and completely lets herself go into the morph. Like...
yeah.
Blackout morph.
Yeah, I just wrote down Rachel kills everyone.
Yeah, she does. And even at the end of it, like, the scene itself is like, oh, she's slashing, she's brutalizing, she's doing whatever she can. And then the next thing she knows is Jake screaming at her, you're out of control. And she's trying to slash Jake open. Like, she followed him into the drop shaft, and she's, like, following him up, trying to, like, get at him. And that's, I guess, how Jake got her out of the situation.
She's in a rage. She's the maddest she's ever been.
Yup. That's basically what happened.
So
yes.
So I had a point with this that I had a note that I wrote down. So earlier when Rachel's thinking about, like, her parents and her dad specifically, and I think her parents had a conversation that, like, they wanted a boy for their next baby, and then the dad's like, oh, well, you know, we have Rachel. She's, like, better than any boy. And then the mom's like, little girls don't want to hear you say stuff like that. And then that got me thinking, like, okay, Rachel always, she kind of suppresses her emotions, at least her, like, her sad emotions, and all of her emotions manifest into, like, anger.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking about how, like, society encourages specifically males to suppress their emotions, and that can manifest into them, you know, explosive because they're not, like, healthily dealing with these emotions, and that's why, like, they have these, like, angry bursts. I'm not trying to, like, be like, all men are, you know, like this, but...
not trying to generalize.
But, yeah, but I wonder if, like, somewhere in her upbringing, Rachel was kind of encouraged to suppress her emotions like that, and that's why she is so, like... she can get very hostile and she can have these kind of violent outbursts. I
mean, I could totally see that with her dad, because the relationship she seems to have with her dad, even now, is, like, he'll imply something to her, and she wants to, like, live up to that. She wants to impress it. Like, how many times in this book did she say, would my dad be proud of me for what I'm doing with the Animorphs? I wish I could tell him. So... that's like anytime her dad says to her, like, you know, she's crying about something, he's like, oh, you know, be strong, don't do that. Like,
oh yeah.
and even at the end of the book, it mentions something about that too, doesn't it? Like, there's a comment where she's like, my dad would have said something like, you know, oh, cheer up, it can't all be that bad. Mm-hmm. So I could totally see that happening.
Yeah.
And also,
I was just kind of like, don't let her cry.
Yeah, right. It's like, let her feel that. But also, that's like, this is what resonates with me, like, kind of on a personal level, because it's always like, it's a point of pride to be able to stay strong and to not have those emotions other than, you know, acceptable ones. And I say that in quotation marks, you know, like, you can show anger in a certain amount, but you can't show, like, sadness or weakness. So you can show certain things in certain ways, but it can never be too much. Like, that totally resonates with me. And the whole, like, you know, you're a tomboy, you're into this stuff that people don't expect you to be in, and it's like, yeah, like, that was me as a child, and probably now I'm probably deeply damaged. But that was, like, as a kid, it's like, look how strong I am, look what I can do, look how much I can lift, look how much better I am at this than the boys, look at, you know. And
that goes the other way too. Like, you know, society kind of teaches girls, like, you can't get angry, you can't, like, you can't get in anyone's way. Like, if you project yourself in a certain way, society's gonna reject you. So it totally goes the other way too. Because I grew up like that. I grew up just kind of not wanting to upset anybody or cause any sort of strife.
Yeah, no, that's totally accurate. And I think I mentioned this back in, like, episode 2. Like, I got into a fight with a friend of mine because he was a boy and we wanted to see if boys or girls are stronger. Like, it's so stupid how much this informs you as a person. Like, just these comments and like, I mean, this is probably me, like, again, thinking of this character in a book as a real person, but, like, think about how this stuck with her for all of these years. And one of the things that she thinks back on when thinking of her parents is how her dad's so proud of her for being, like, a boy and for being strong. And like, that informs you as a person, especially at that age.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can totally see that. And then her, like, going into the morphs, too. Like, she still has this pressure because how often do we hear in these books, like, I look to Rachel for strength, or we needed Rachel's crazy, we needed Rachel's bravery, we need her to do that. And so it's like she can't drop this facade at this point either, because now she has her friends relying on her, and it's an asset in these books. Like, this is an asset to the team, but for her personally, this isn't, it's not
tearing
healthy.
her apart.
Yeah, it's tearing her apart, and it's not healthy.
You're tearing me apart, Rachel.
This is bullshit. I did not.
I did not hit her.
I did not hit her.
Oh my god.
It's difficult. I wrote a note about that too, but I wrote it from the point of, I absolutely resonated with this. Like, this was, as a kid, this was me. I'm gonna prove I'm stronger than you. I'm gonna prove I'm better than you. And then if I can't do it, I'm gonna reject it as stupid. Like, math, stupid, don't need it. See, this is still me as a person.
You're such a fire sign. It's awesome.
About how intense I am.
Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, I'd still suffer from this to this day. Like, it's still, like, anyways, we'll go back to the book, because, like, I think this is something that we can keep revisiting, especially in Rachel books. But as we watch Rachel's characters change, I would love to come back and keep revisiting this commentary on her person, as it gets mentally different throughout. I think this is something that we'll revisit several times. But it was good. Like, this is the first, like, baseline of where we're gonna go with Rachel's personality.
Yeah.
Anyways, after the whole Yerkpool thing happens, they get to the top of the drop shaft. Axe is taking out the security, and he's trying to morph human, but they're all exhausted. They've totally, Rachel especially, she doesn't remember getting home. She just remembers walking into her house and going to sleep. And then she's trying to wake up to her alarm the next morning. And her mom's saying, you showed up at our house at 9 p.m. barefoot, wearing a leotard, and didn't talk to me, didn't eat dinner. You just went to bed? Like, what's going on? Like, I know your dad's giving you this, like, shit choice, but, like, what's going on? And she's kind of joking and laughing and saying, like, yeah, that's my problem. My problem is what Dad said. Sure, Mom. Like, you fucking idiot.
She's just like, ugh.
Yeah. She's like, her mom's just being dumb at this point. Not that her mom has any way of knowing, but it's like, you dumbass, this isn't even the slightest bit of my problem right now. Like, you don't understand how shitty my problem actually is.
No one understands me.
No one understands me. So, yeah, and then her mom kind of like says, when I get home tonight, we'll discuss this and get your sister on the bus. And she leaves. And Rachel just goes to her other sister, Jordan, and says, get Sarah on the bus.
And Rachel stays the fuck home.
She does.
That day.
She skips school. And she watches the TV and watches, like, presumably Jerry Springer, and is like, I wish I had these people's problems. This is so stupid. So she does that, and then she turns on the TV and sees her dad on the news, and she's just eating a grilled cheese sandwich, like, with the TV on mute, and then she starts screaming, what do I do?
Yeah.
Probably not healthy. And then she turns on the volume, and her dad's saying, like, and, you know, it's such a great opportunity, we'll miss you, but he's like, yeah, I'm on to bigger and better things, and that's
And
probably...
she rages.
She rages. She rages, and then she turns into an eagle and goes flying for a while.
Mm-hmm. She escapes within a morph again.
She absolutely leans into the morph, and just, as we find out in the next scene, flies around from, like, noon to, like, late afternoon, and it's been enough time that she had to come down, demorph, and then went flying again.
Oh my god.
And the way we find this out is that they're having their meeting at the barn, and Marco says, where were you today? There's a little bit about Cassie asking her to help Cassie with the Kestrel, which smallest falcon in the U.S. and the only one that hates my guts consistently. They do. Kestrels hate me. And then Marco says, where were you today? And Rachel is very defensive. Like,
oh, yeah.
Not here. And then Tobias says, oh, I saw an eagle flying around noon. I should have known that was you, because eagles don't really do that. That was a little out of character, so I should have known that was you. And Rachel's like, can't I get any privacy around here? Like, do you have to know what I'm doing all the time? Mm-hmm. And for her to snap at Tobias, you know it's probably pretty bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they basically, Rachel explodes when Jake starts to get on her case. When it's Marco and Tobias, she can snap back, but when Jake starts getting on her, she's like, listen, this is the shit that I have going down. My dad wants me to move away, and Cassie goes, oh no, like, what are you thinking about doing? And Rachel's like, the fuck do you think I'm gonna do? Like, yeah. You know, she's very upset about this, and there's no way she should be letting this bother her, so she thinks. And Cassie makes the point of, like, well, different things bother different people, different amounts. It's like a personal thing. It's not, you know, maybe it's really getting to you. And Rachel's just not having any of it. So while this is all going down and Rachel's trying to decide whether or not she can go with her dad, who's a jerk for dumping this on her, or stay with the Animorphs, the Ellimist pops up again. This is right after Marco decides to change his vote, which I think is what is the catalyst for the Ellimist popping up.
Yeah, because Jake also had an interesting moment where, like, he and Rachel are yelling at each other, and he's just like, you know what, I'm tired of having the answers. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of, like, breaks down a little bit, and because everyone has seen from their previous experience with the Ellimist that the Ellimist basically told them, like, if you continue to fight, the human race is gonna lose. And so everyone's kind of going through this whole, like, well, what the fuck is the point of anything then, if we're all just gonna die or become controllers? Exactly.
And what is the point? He's this all-knowing deity, basically. Force Ghost is telling them that they're gonna lose and there's no way to win, and why bother? And Jake's clearly already exhausted, and he's coming off of his him being a slave of the Yeerk that was his brother, like his brother's Yeerk. So he's messed up. And they were saying it was almost a visible change too, like the facade dropped, and instead of looking like he was in control and in charge, his eyes were red. He looks exhausted, and he's like, I can't fucking tell you what to do. If you're gonna be this way, you do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. Like, he just cannot give a shit. And then Marco is scared. He's like, if this is Rachel breaking down now, what's the hope for the rest of us? You know? Yeah. So it's like this Jake sees the breakdown of the human race as a cause for defeat, and Marco sees the breakdown of Rachel as the cause for defeat.
And, like, this is another, like, I think in the last book, he said something like, well, if Rachel's agreeing with me, then, you know, I'm making the wrong decision.
Yep.
Then I think Marco really looks to Rachel for insight a lot.
Yeah.
Like, since this keeps, like, coming up, like, I think he can really, based on her reactions, really gauge a situation, which is interesting.
Do you think he sees Rachel as his opposite foil, and so when she's
just does the antithesis of...
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be like, yes, because I think in a joking way he would, but I think Marco is so logical that he would gauge the situation depending. Like, he would sometimes agree with Rachel if the situation called for it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's probably more, thinking about this now, it's probably more like, since Rachel is all emotion and he's all logic, that they'll, like I've said, they land on the same side a lot of the time. Yeah. But he probably sees it when Rachel goes overboard with the emotion. It's so foreign to him that it like makes him second guess what he's doing, I think. I wonder.
I don't know.
So the Ellimist, after Marco changes his vote, transports them somewhere, and they don't really know where, but Tobias is back as a human and Axe is there. And it's Tobias that says, this is the school. What it is a reduced pile of rubble in front of them. And things are wrong. Like Cassie points out, those trees are dead. The sky smells, like, it looks weird. It's a weird color. The air smells funny. Things are wrong. And they were like, oh, let's look around. Like, the Ellimist wants us to look. Let's look. And they look inside of the building, and they see a skeleton of what is presumably their dead history teacher. And they realize it's probably been a while to make a freaking full-blown skeleton instead of just a dead body. So they're trying to, like, figure out where they are in time. They don't really know. They decide to walk towards the mall. And as they're walking there, they see, like, a big monorail, and that's moving, as Axe says, like 300 miles an hour. And Marco goes, you mean not your hours? And he goes, there might be kilometers. And, like, you know, they're joking back and forth, but, like, the whole while they're passing out these basically, like, bombed out remains of everything they knew. And, like, trucks are stopped on the highway with skeletons behind the wheel. And
it's like that scene in Serenity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, my God. Except it was, like, so much more violent on the outskirts.
Yeah.
I actually almost thought of it like some of the scenes, like, in The Walking Dead, when they'd go past, like, the highways that are just backed up the entire... Not so much the school part of it, but, like, the highway where you just see, like, the cars, like, back to back to back, and these are all the people that were trying to escape, and some people just had to abandon their cars, and others just died in where they were, and...
Yikes.
Yeah, so they get to the mall, and they basically just see the mall, but it's a hive of Taxons where the walls are opened up with giant holes, and they're just, you know, crawling all over the space. And that's when they realize, like, hey, if Earth was taken, then probably they assume everybody's a human controller, so let's just pretend we're controllers and see what's up. So Axe morphs human, and he says it's too bad about the mall because they had the best food. Oops. And then the Animorphs get onto this bullet train, which they say a 30-minute bus ride took about a minute and a half to get there. And these trains are outfitted for Taxons in the back, Hork-Bajir in the front, and then a ton of seating for people. They say the biggest amount there was for people. So they take that into the city, and as they're going into it, they can see, like, everything's wrong. These big towers, they're being, like, you know, things are crawling all over them. There's only one building in the middle of the city that's kind of still standing, and the rest of it's really been either reduced to rubble, or it's a Taxon hive, or it's something else is weird. And when they get into the city, they notice that in the middle of it, there's this giant frickin' yerk pool that's like the size of a lake. They notice the host bodies that are trapped around there are just these people that are utterly defeated. Like, they're not even, like, screaming anymore, like, let me go. They're just screaming and crying, and there's no hope. So while they're wandering around kind of viewing all these horrific things, this woman kind of bumps into Rachel, who instinctively goes, "Excuse me." And the woman turns around and goes, "What's your name?" And she's asking what's her Yerk name, not what's her name. So Rachel's kind of freaking out. And Tobias goes, "Her name's none of your concern. It's his name that you have to think about." And she's like, "What?" And he goes, "It's his name you're concerned about. His name is Visor 3. And he points to Axe. And the woman's kind of like, yeah, okay. And then Axe starts demorphing. And she just goes, "Oh my god, it's Visor 1. And she's freaking out because, of course, he's going to behead her, obviously. And she takes off, and they're like, "Okay, so what do we do now?" Like, Axe said some bullshit thing, like, if you weren't so vigilant, I would have had to behead you for being such a fool. And so he lets her go. She takes off, and they're like, "Okay, word's gonna spread that Visor 1, congrats on the promotion, buddy, is here." And while that conversation's happening, they're trying to decide what to do. Rachel realizes she's strangely drawn to this bug fighter that's about to land. So she's walking towards it, and out of this bug fighter steps Visor 3 and this woman. And Visor 3, he's scary, dark, blah, 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 the usual bullshit. And then she realizes that there's this 22, 23-year-old girl, and she goes, "Hi, Rachel," to which the girl responds, "Hi, Rachel." Because it's Rachel!
Bizarro! Bizarro!
And Rachel meets herself, the controller version of herself. And she starts monologuing like, "Oh, how did you find this?" "Well, obviously everything is as it was before because I've been here. I remember it from when I was you." And it's kind of this weird back and forth where Rachel's kind of like, our Rachel, young Rachel, is not quite knowing what to think of this. And Jake is going, "What choice did we make?" And old Rachel goes, "Obviously the right one." And Cassie says, "Let's get out of here," because they decide obviously Visor 3 and Rachel can't kill them because that would change the past. So Cassie's like, "Screw this. Let's get out of here." She trips into young Rachel. Old Rachel grabs young Rachel's arm to steady her, and Axe whips his tail at the older Rachel because she looks like she's gonna jump young Rachel or something. And that's when the old Rachel starts freaking out. And so they realize, oh my god, something's different. Something is not the same as it was. And that's when they're like, okay, shit, what's our choice going to be now? Because this is different. That's kind of the end of the scene there, because Rachel have this realization, and then shit breaks loose, because young Rachel is turning into a grizzly bear. So that ends the conversation portion of our day, and suddenly young Rachel's going into berserker mode again. Young Rachel's freaking out because things are different, and she says, "What are we gonna do?" And Visor 3 goes, "What are you gonna do? I'm running." And that's when young Rachel goes and charges Visor 3, knocks him to the ground, lifts up her paw because she's gonna deliver the killing blow to Visor 3, and then she's a human. She smacks her hand on a tree trunk because the Ellimist pulled him out.
Just in time, and Rachel's really frustrated that she didn't get to kill Visor 3.
Yeah. So, what did you think of this whole conversation between young Rachel and old Rachel?
Well, actually, I was thinking, old Rachel didn't say, "Oh, you made the choice to stay and fight." She just said you made the right choice. So I was kind of thinking, okay, what if only some of the Animorphs chose to stay and fight, and the others chose to go with the Ellimist? It was really kind of open to interpretation.
I think the main part of the conversation that I even latched onto, because this was it almost felt so incidental to me. This conversation held no real merit towards the plot of the book. It was more like them just trying to posture.
Well, and I think it was just a method to show them that they can, there are many different timelines. There's not just one straight timeline that they're destined to go down. They can change the past, and it will affect the future. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good point. The whole thing was kind of incidental.
Oh, and then the part that I didn't mention, Visor 3 tries to mess with Rachel by telling her that when he captured them all, they ate Tobias, and she ate Tobias laughing with barbecue sauce. And that was just fucked up. It didn't
so fucked up.
It didn't hold any bearing other than making Rachel mad. It's just fucked up.
What happens after that?
what happens after that is that they have the same conversation again about what to do. Like,
oh yeah,
who's gonna vote no? Who's gonna vote yes? What's gonna happen? And Rachel, she's gonna say no, or she's gonna say yes to going to the planet now. She's gonna say no to saving the Earth because clearly, if she stayed to save the Earth, then she's gonna be a controller. So that happens, and then Jake's defeated. I think he's the only one that still wants to stay and fight. Everybody else kind of taps out at that point. I don't remember Tobias weighing in on this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Jake's really the only one that's still ready. So Jake says, yeah, take us away, preserve us, and nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
So they're in school the next day. They're all on edge. They're all expecting to be like taken out at any point in time. Not really sure what to do. And Rachel's sitting in the history class with the teacher who they found as a skeleton. So, yeah, super awkward. Would not want to be in that situation. So she's talking about World War II, and there's a little bit of, you know, if America had joined and, if they weren't so dedicated to peace, then they would have ended the war quicker and blah, blah, blah. So she's kind of like harping on this a little bit. And then she says, but, there's no way to go back and change the past. And Cassie is the one that goes, why not? Like, why can't we speculate on the past and how it could be different? The teacher says something about like, well, it's just a lot more complicated. It's not math. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's so many different things. And she brings up the metaphor of the butterfly in China flaps its wings, causes a hurricane and, the other side of the world.
Mm-hmm.
When the teacher's saying this, she has a moment where her eyes kind of go funky and she looks at Rachel and she repeats, a single butterfly, a single butterfly, a single butterfly, and then snaps out of it. And
subtle.
Yeah. Then she's like, oh, so anyways, you have your readings and blah, blah, blah. So class ends. Cassie and Rachel walk out together and they talk about how everyone's waiting to be whisked away. And Cassie's like, she's like, this doesn't feel right. Things feel wrong. That doesn't feel like the right choice. This doesn't feel like the right action from the Elemist. It just doesn't seem right. And Rachel's really kind of more focused on this whole butterfly thing. And she's like, well, when does the butterfly know how to flap its wings? Like, she's really, this metaphor is sticking with her. So, Cassie's realizing, like, well, it seems like the Element wants them to say yes. Maybe they don't. And maybe he's, like, not quite what he seems to be. And that's where they leave off, this turmoil and this, discussion about this. And next thing we know, Rachel's having a dream where she's, like, kind of blending together all the actions that have happened over the past few days of, like, the Yerk pool and the getting taken by the Elemist to, like, the hellscape future and kind of going back and forth between everything and putting it together. And all of a sudden she realizes, like, hey, I know where the Kandrona is. And she, like, sits up bolt upright in bed, has this moment of, like, okay, I gotta go right now. She stops to leave her mom a note saying she went for a run so her mom doesn't freak out. She goes flying into Tobias's meadow again as a great horned owl as fast as she can. And she's yelling shit at him like, we're gonna change history. And he's like, Rachel, why are you doing this again? I asked you not to. And she's like, follow me. We find out in the next scene that they apparently next burst into Marco's house and gave him a heart attack and got him up. But we end up going to the barn. It was only an offhand comment from Marco that let us know that that's what they did. So they all end up at the barn together, and Rachel's just, like, bouncing off the walls. And she's like, every time the Elemist has appeared, he's given us a way out. And Cassie's with Rachel on this because she's the one that was talking about it at school earlier. And she thinks Rachel's figured out a piece of this. And, maybe the Elemist himself is trapped. And so he doesn't agree with us, and that's why he hasn't taken action. And Rachel's going, he points out the drop shaft. He talks, he's talking about this, but he's really been on our side the whole time. Maybe he wants to save Earth. And when he took us to that hellscape, the only building left standing was the EGS tower. That's where the Kandrona is. We have to go get it.
The eggs tower.
The eggs tower. And that's when Rachel brings up that butterfly thing again and something about flapping the butterfly. And Tobias repeats her same sentiment, which is, but how does the butterfly know when to flap its wings? And then Marco's like, and what does an Animorph do? And, like, because Rachel goes, oh, the butterfly can't know. It just has to flap his wings. And what does an Animorph do? And Rachel goes, kicking Yerk butt. They take off to the EGS tower, land in an alleyway, go to Battlemorphs. Cassie scares the shit out of a drunk guy, which is hilarious.
Amazing.
Yeah, he goes running down the street, and then Marco has, like, the best interaction of all time, possibly, where he taps on the window as a gorilla, and the guard comes over, and he says, hey, I just came from a masquerade party. I'm looking for Visor 3. And the guard goes, and a light. He goes, oh, good, you are a controller. That makes this easier. And punches through the glass and then takes the guy out. So that's going to go down as my favorite part of this book.
Frickin'
Just
Marco.
so you know. They get into the building and they go to the elevator and they split up. So it's Jake, Marco, Rachel in one elevator and Cassie and Axe in the other fright elevator. Because they can't get up in the normal elevator because Jake's a tiger, Marco's a gorilla. Rachel has gone grizzly, not elephant. So note, this is the change in her battle morph when she really does start doing grizzly more than elephant. And I think size issues was the catalyst for this. She still does elephant sometimes, but this is where she gets the grizzly and decides like that's going to be her main battle morph now. So
Cool.
she flipped. And then of course Cassie's the wolf and Axe is himself. So get up to the top of the elevator, and there's a bunch of Hork-Bajir outside. So they just start fighting their way out and, like, smashing through things. Jake gets cut really badly. I think we don't hear exactly where he's cut. He just says it's bad. And then after they take out these Hork-Bajir, the elevator next to them dings, and it's Cassie and Axe, and they're late because Axe pressed the wrong button.
I can just imagine him just like pressing all the buttons, being like, "Ooh, what does
exactly
this
what
do?"
I pictured. Him just taking his 7-fingered Andalite hands and just like down the buttons.
And Cassie's just like, "No."
Fine.
Okay.
Axe, we gotta stop at every floor now. God
All
damn it.
right.
And her just hitting the closed door button like every single.
God damn it, Axe.
She's the only one that would put up with it too, because like Jake and Rachel and Marco would have all been like, "You motherfucker, why would you do that?" And Cassie's just like, shit, all right. So, anyways, once they're all joined together, they decide that they're going to go on and charge into this top room looking for the Kendrona. And,
Well, Rachel charges in. Everyone's like,
There's a
"Rachel is
door!"
okay. I guess we're doing this."
and this is, I love this part because they're like, "Rachel, there's a door." And she's like, "Not anymore." Boom. And she charges into the room into 7 Hork-Bajir and she goes, "They weren't great odds." And then she kind of takes us out of the moment. She goes, "So, like, when that happened, they thought I was brave, but I just couldn't see. I thought it was 7 humans. I had no clue they were Hork-Bajir." And,
Hork-Bajir are a lot taller than humans,
yeah, but
though,
grizzly
right?
bears are pretty blind. Not that blind, I think. I think she was just blinded by rage. So, yeah. Blackout rage. So she runs in, and it starts this battle where she just blacks out, goes into berserker mode again, and is slicing and dicing and getting just mauled. And she mentions, like, how bad it is, like, how injured she's getting. She can feel just the energy seeping out of her body.
And everyone else is screaming.
Yeah, and she says she doesn't know if it's, like, Andalite. Well, yeah, Andalite, Animorph, or Hork-Bajir screaming. It's just a mix of screaming and blood and horror. And she, at one point, charges into a Hork-Bajir and smashes him into a wall. And then she hears it crack and shatter. And it turns out that was one of the windows. And the Hork-Bajir goes flying 60 floors down out of this window. And what happens next is Tobias comes flying in and joins this battle. And that apparently just, like, turns the tide. Yeah, they scared that when he joined in, it scared the Hork-Bajir, and they take off the remaining ones. There's a ton that are unconscious on the floor. They said they're still breathing, but I mean, we don't really know. And that's when Marco slams the door back up, puts a desk in front of it, and they say, "Everybody demorph," and they do. And they're back in their, like, human states, and they're exhausted, but they're all still alive and uninjured because they've now demorphed. There's a connecting room that is where they think the Kendrona is. So they walk in, and in it, they see this car-sized, they said cylinder that was tapered on both ends. And they said it smelled like ozone. It was giving off electricity, so all their hair was, like, standing on end. And it was big and heavy enough that they're like, what do we do now? And Jake asks Rachel, can you go to Elephant? And she's like, yeah, all right. And even as the elephant, she has to drag inch by inch this thing out of the room, pushes it out the open window after Tobias made sure the street was clear, and it falls down 60 stories and smashes on the ground. And this is their victory.
Yay, they did it.
Yes, they did it.
Yay.
They went on an offensive mission, and they won. I think this is the first time that's happened. I know.
Woohoo.
It's epic. So...
Thanks, Berserker
yeah,
Grizzly.
thanks, Berserker Grizzly. So, they do that, and the Elemist appears to them again after this happens, because the whole thing was that when they realized they had this mission that they could win and they could succeed, and the Elemist gave them the tools to, like, destroy the Kandrona, this was a huge blow to the Yeerks, and that's what invigorated them to want to keep fighting for Earth. So the Elemist shows up, and he doesn't really have to ask, like, what their choice is. It's kind of clear in this moment that they've all decided that they just have to fight. That's the only option. There's no preserving them. There's no going to this, like, fucked up planet where they're in a zoo. They'll fight forever. That's when the Elemist breaks it to them that there's a new Kandrona ray on the way. It'll be there in 3 weeks. And then they're kind of bummed. They're like, wow, this entire fucking mission was in vain. Thanks. And that's when Axe says, no, it's not, because that's 3 weeks from now. They're still going to get behind schedule, and thousands of Yeerks are going to die. So we've still done damage to them. And that reinvigorates them. It's kind of that mode of, yay! Aw, yay! And so that's when I think it's Jake asks, you guys still good to morph birds? And they go flying away. And they've won. This is, I think, their first victory. Huzzah! And that leads to, like, the final page of our book, which is Rachel just saying goodbye to her dad. And she's decided not to move with him. She can't relocate. That's the moral of this particular book. Do not relocate.
Stay where you are forever.
But yeah, she's saying goodbye to her dad, and he's kind of joking with her, but is, like, really sad about it, obviously, because he won't see her a lot, and he's saying, I'm gonna fly back all the time, and Rachel goes, yeah, he said that, but, I know that's not really how that's gonna go. Oh, do you want to come to the airport with me? I'll send you home in a cab. And she goes, no, I can't really do that. And he goes, yeah, I know you're really busy with your friends and all, kind of jokingly, and she goes, yeah, we have to save the world. She's not lying. And so he leaves. And the end of the book is Tobias asking her if she's going with him.
On a bird date.
They're going to go fly.
Aw,
That's the end of the book. I loved this book.
I did too. And can I just say, when I was finished reading the book, I kind of had this little crisis because I'm like, okay, this was a Rachel book. I don't know if I was on board with it. Like, I don't know if I don't know if I cared much for Rachel in this book. Like, I mean, I cared, and I think she's a great character, but, like, she's so different from me that, like, I had a hard time kind of relating to her. Like, I don't know if this book made me think she's my favorite character or anything. Like, yeah. I think she's a great character. I think she went through really believable emotions and development, but I don't know if I can get on board with her being, like, my favorite character. But that said, I liked Cassie a lot more in this book.
Me too. I really liked Cassie in this book.
Yeah. Like, I wasn't sure, she was pretty, quick to, when the Elemist first offered to, like, take them away from Earth, like, she was the first one to be like, hey, that sounds good, let's do it. Yeah. Which probably wasn't the most desirable decision at the time, but then I kind of realized, you know what, I would probably do the same thing. And, like, I think I'm very kind of similar to Cassie in the whole, like, I'd rather kind of take the slow route, I want to be nonviolent, I'm a little more hesitant where everyone else is a little more gung-ho. So, I don't know. This book made me realize, like, I think I'm probably the most similar to Cassie so far. Yeah,
I mean, I won't...
That could change.
I won't agree or disagree with that, but, what I respected the most about Cassie in this book. And as I've said, like, when I read these, I like Cassie a lot, up until a certain point. And this was, like, when she made this decision that she wouldn't mind being in a preserve, it wasn't out of a place of being scared. Like, it was, but it wasn't out of a place of being kind of ready to give up on the human race. It was a logical decision that was thought through quickly, but still thought through, and her arguments were legitimate. So I don't think that was from a place of cowardice. I really liked that decision from Cassie. I wouldn't take that decision. Like, that wouldn't be mine. I'd want to keep fighting, but
sure,
I totally understand where she's coming from, and it's a logical, sound thing.
Also, I said all that stuff about Rachel, how about like she's a great character, but she's not my favorite character. And then I got into the thing about Cassie, but what I meant to come back to was that I had that initial reaction about Rachel at the end of her book, but talking about her with you now, I like her a lot more again. Like, I don't know, just like kind of talking through like what happened and like getting your feedback on things. Like, I like Rachel a lot more now than when I finished the end of her book. Because, like, she was just so, like, filled with rage and, like, suppressing her emotions, and I couldn't get on board with that, because I'm all like, talk about your emotions! Like, this isn't healthy! Like, you're going down this kind of dark path.
Yeah.
But, like, that makes her so interesting, though.
Yeah.
I'm just scared for her, you know? Like, I'm scared about all these kind of habits that are developing. Ugh,
oh, yeah, and, like, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that's not going to get better.
Yeah.
Like, none of this is going to get easier.
Yeah.
Spoilers, if you were thinking it was going to get better from here on out, but it's
no.
not.
We've got, like, 50 more books of despair to go.
Oh, yeah. It just gets worse and worse for all, because as we said back in Marco's book and Jake's book, this is all about breaking them down piece by piece until you find out what's left. It's not about building them up and becoming better and learning how to be a complete individual that's well-rounded and able to live in society. It's about how far can
Chipping
you push
away
somebody.
slowly.
Exactly. Yeah. So
hard.
yeah, I love Rachel. So, and I really like Cassie in these first books. I really do. And, like, I think that once we start getting to more of her books from her perspective, and stories from her perspective, because the next one's Megamorphs, and that's from everybody's perspective. Like, I do appreciate what she brings, and I appreciate that Cassie asked the hard questions about morality, because as you know, that's not my strong suit. So I appreciate it. So,
oh god,
those are my thoughts.
I didn't really like Cassie in a couple of the books before this. Like, I didn't like her in her book because I thought she was, like, being kind of rude. Not
yeah.
rude, but,
no, you're right.
Like,
you're right.
She did that dumb thing with the squirrel, and, like, and she was, like, yelling at Jake and kind of being hypocritical about that, and so I was
telling Marco's dad to get over the death of his mom. And
and, like, I was really lukewarm on her for a long time, but this particular book, I felt like, okay, I see where she's coming from. She seems like a consistent character, and she's actually, like, really likable.
Yeah.
So, like, her character's just been so inconsistent for me for a really long time.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I think it was just deciding what her character really was. Like, Rachel was solidly Rachel from the start. Jake, he was a character, but he has to grow into a different character. Marco was Marco. Like, Tobias had his own struggles and growths, and he didn't really need to be formed, but Cassie was kind of like, what are we doing with her exactly? Like, there was no clear character description for her at the start. So I think we're finally getting to the point where we're getting into what her strengths are and how that benefits the team. Anyway, should we wrap this up?
Let's do it.
All right. What do we have? We have Twitter. Follow us at Animorphs Anon. We have Facebook, facebook.com/AnimorphsAnonymous. We have Gmail, anonymousanimorphs@gmail.com. We have a website, which is animorphsanonymous.com. Oh, and an Instagram.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot about that one.
I have, like, a list here.
Thank God, because I'm just winging it. Yeah, but we have an Instagram, which is at Animorphs Anonymous. And I think that's all of our social media.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And if whatever you're listening to us on, if you don't like that particular service, you have many services to choose from. We're on iTunes, we're on Google Play, we're on Podbean, we're on Stitcher, and we are on Pocketcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're probably, like, really searchable by now on Google. If you Google Animorphs Anonymous Podcast, you probably will be able to find us.
Probably.
Which is cool.
Yeah, we're not really worried about security and not being found.
Aren't we, though?
We are and we aren't.
We can't tell you our names or where we live.
Yeah, but we'll tell you our website and all of our social media.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's everywhere to follow us and to listen to us. And, if you want to leave good reviews, if you want to leave us bad reviews, but just put it under a 5-star, I won't tell. All right. And that's all.
All right. Catch you on the flip side, suckers.
Later.